See, because they didn't have understanding. Now look, your parents, let's say that your parents were halfway decent. Many of us had parents who were halfway decent. They did what they could. But it wasn't good enough. Now why is that? Because they were trying they were meddling. They were trying to make things better. They were trying to build your character. They were trying to something. And they followed the tried and true path of sending you off to daycare and off to school and taught you to be ambitious, and they gave you a hard time, and they were angry, and then they felt guilty, and then they were too nice, and they spoiled you, and then they saw that, and then they were too harsh, and they just didn't get it right. So to get things perfectly right, you need God to get things perfectly right. Look at how he makes trees and flowers and everything, and it's perfect. He makes millions and billions of them, and they're all perfect, down to the smallest detail. So you do not realize that if you got your resentments out of the way. See, so what's blocking you now from God flowing through you? Well, first of all, you still think that by acquiring knowledge that you can solve your own problems without God. See, you're still playing God. So God won't solve your problems as long as you're playing God. You have to stop playing God and let him take over. But in order for him to take over, you have to find him. And you're not going to find him in a book. You're not going to find him in fancy, nice words, or in music, or in a building, or in somebody else's words, or in somebody else's teaching or preaching or writing or anything like that. You're not going to find him. You have to find him within. And to do that, you must learn to be still. There's something about moving about ambitiously. Maybe you know someone that rushes around meddling and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that, and they a great deal of energy, and it's all they're majoring in what's that expression? Majoring in the minors, or they're making the trivial things important and the important things trivial. You get it all backwards. If you could just cease and desist from your strivings and your struggling and your rushing around, and if you could just be quiet, then you could get back in touch with your intuition, which is from God. God gives animals instinct. He gives humans intuition. And is how he communicates with people. He communicates by way of conscience. Yes, he does. He does communicate through, for example, the prophets. And he communicated by way of the cross. To believe in your heart is to know wordlessly, but intuitively. You don't even know how you know, you just know, and you believe it. That's how, see, God makes you to know, doesn't he? He makes you to know. But in order to know, you have to become still. And you have to be receptive. In other words, you have to want to know the truth. If you don't want to know the truth, then you don't have the right frame of mind to receive it. You must be still and receptive, and you have to be willing to admit you're wrong. That's right. You have to see that you've resented people. See, it's a terrible thing to resent other people, to hate other people. See, and to meddle and mess everything up. I'll give you an example. This is just a little story, and then I'll make an end to this video. I think I've made my point. And that's why we meditate, to become still with a proper meditation. So you can stand back from your rabid thoughts. Those thoughts represent temptation. Either things that you've rushed around and done and messed up, or things that you think give you glory, or things that you worry about. There's another act of playing God, as if your worry could solve anything. Or they represent temptation itself approaching you. See, through the imagination and through words, wanting to intrude on your relationship with your Creator. But I was at Starbucks the other morning, and there was a husband and wife and a little boy, maybe 5 years old, maybe. And they had ordered something and they were waiting for it to be ready. A little boy grabbed a chair. He picked up a chair, one of those heavy, noisy Starbucks chairs, you know, when you drag them on the floor. And he was carrying it to a table, which had 2 chairs. So he was taking the 3rd chair so that Mommy and Daddy and he could sit at the table and enjoy their item. But somehow it didn't work out. Somehow the parents looked at him like he was doing something wrong, and they made him put the chair back. And then somehow they didn't even stay there. Then they rushed off, and he had to run after them. You see? Do you see the sweetness? Can you see that? But there was something about the whole thing that wasn't quite right. And I could see there was probably some anger. It was one of those situations. I know what it is now. I can put words on it. He couldn't do anything right. Everything that he did was somehow wrong. Somehow they criticized and disapproved of everything that he did. Just think how sweet it would have been if he had dragged that chair over. He didn't drag it over, he carried it over quietly. And if Daddy had said, well, you know, why don't we sit here for a few minutes, the 3 of us? And they all could have sat there and it would have been so sweet. That's what the little boy wanted. And if they were in a hurry, which they probably were, they could have just sat there for 2 or 3 minutes. And then Daddy could have said, well, I think we probably better go now because we have to get to work. But they ruined it. They destroyed the sweetness. And I could tell by the expression on his face that he was very upset. The little boy, probably getting angry. That's his trauma. So they messed it up big time. They messed it up. They may even be wicked. They may not be, but something is operating through them. Something that doesn't have any love in it is operating through them. And so it's been operating, it operates through everyone. But it didn't operate through Christ. Something that had love operated through him, and it was God. When they saw him, when they saw Christ, and they heard him, and they saw the look on his face, they saw love. You see? Now, a lot of people could get better instantly if they saw that love, especially if they saw it in the face of their dad, for example. It doesn't have to be dad, it can be anyone, but you have to know that it exists. You have to know that love exists. And if you see it in someone's face, it's a nice thing to see it. But you know what? It's even better yet to experience God's love within. So you must learn to be still, get the little meditation. Learn to stand back from thoughts. There's no love in there. Stand back from emotions. There's no love there. Emotions are animal. Stand back and experience the quietness, the sweetness that comes from God when you yearn for him with all your heart and you stop resenting other people. It's very beautiful.